Next time you see this plant in your backyard, don't cut it down, because this is the best natural painkiller you'll ever find. Some people even compare it to morphine. This common plant is called wild lettuce and was commonly used by Native Americans 2 centuries ago for both food and medicine. So today I'm going to show you how to make a simple wild lettuce extract to keep in your medicine cabinet and use whenever you need it. Now if you take a leaf or stem and squeeze it, you'll see a white substance coming out. This is where the potency of the plant lies. Because of this white juice, the early European settlers also called it opium lettuce. This milky substance doesn't contain any opiates, but it's working on the central nervous system directly to lessen the feeling of pain. Nowadays, many people are turning their attention back to this lost knowledge and use it as a replacement for addictive prescription pain medicines. So let's avert our gaze from our modern survival thinking for just a bit and look at how our great-grandparents did it 150 years ago. This is exactly the kind of information I found in this 350-page book called The Lost Ways. This is probably the only survival book I've actually enjoyed reading. You won't believe how many survival things we've lost to history. I found the wild lettuce on page 113 and decided to make my own painkiller. I collected about 50 leaves today and washed them thoroughly. So the first thing you should do is grind them up in a blender, not very thinly and only just for a few seconds. Place the ground leaves into a wide pot and add just enough water to cover them. Now place the pot on the stove on low heat for 30 minutes. Do not let it boil because you'll destroy all the good stuff in it. Stir every 15 minutes until the water reaches a dark brown color, just like this. Now pour the substance while still hot into another pot through a strainer. Almost none or very little plant material should get through it. Try to squeeze as much water as you can while the plant is in the strainer. This solution contains all the core elements of wild lettuce, especially the pain-killing essence. But it's not concentrated enough yet. So in order to obtain this essence, you should warm it over low heat again until the water is vaporized, basically dehydrating the solution until it becomes a paste like this. Be careful at the end when there is little water left. You should not burn the extract at the bottom of the pot. What you should have now here is pure wild lettuce extract. You can pour it in a small glass container like this and put it in your medicine cabinet for later use when you'll need it. Wild lettuce is unscheduled by the FDA, meaning it's legal to grow, own, and forage without prescription or license, just like how the Native Americans used to heal their pain. In The Lost Ways, you'll find lots of these common and valuable weeds with pictures, how to identify them, how to prepare them, and how to use them, all with different medical effects. Because when the medical system collapses, this will be the only option you have to heal yourself. I personally happen to know the man behind this book. Claude is an old-fashioned guy by any standard. He lives with his wife and 2 children in a log cabin he personally built, cooks outside on an open flame in a cauldron most of the time, and all of his clothes are handmade. He has a 150-square-foot root cellar stuffed with all sorts of homemade canned foods and goods, and he raises cows, sheep, and chickens. I thought several times to myself that this guy will never be troubled by any crisis, because the coming crisis we all prep for is what folks 150 years ago called daily life. No electrical power, no refrigerators, no internet, no computers, no TV, no active law enforcement, no Safeway or Walmart. They got things done or else we wouldn't be here. In the next 7 minutes, Claude will unearth a long-forgotten secret that helped our ancestors survive famines, wars, economic crisis, disease, droughts, and anything else life threw at them. A secret that will help you do the same for your loved ones when America crumbles into the ground. He's also going to share with you 3 pioneer lessons that will ensure your kids are well fed even when others are rummaging through garbage bins. In fact, these 3 old teachings will improve your life just as they did for me, immediately once you hear them.
Hi, my name is Claude. Few of you know me personally. My story is emotionally heavy, with struggles and disappointments, but also with faith in God and a strong will to survive that finally led to my being here. So pay close attention, because this video will change your life for the good. Lesson number 1, don't take anything for granted. My grandfather came to America from the Ukraine just before World War II, started a small farm in Texas. But before that, when he was only 12 and still in Ukraine, he survived a horrific famine. Out of the 100 families that lived on his street, only 20 people lived to tell the tale. What you're about to hear is a real recollection, as it was written in a personal journal just after the crisis by one of his neighbors. Where did all the bread disappear?
I don't really know. Maybe they'd taken it all abroad. The authorities have confiscated it, removed it from the villages, loaded grain into the railway coaches, and took it away someplace.
Most Americans don't even think about having enough food in a crisis until it's too late. Like when the hurricane's barreling down on them, or that catastrophic earthquake strikes, or a tornado rips their town a new one, or wildfires ravage their community. And by then, like I said, it's too late. They have to trust luck, or turn to dear old Uncle Sam to bail them out. And others, like you, I'm guessing, understand that depending on Uncle Sam isn't much of a plan. And so these good people, patriots, do worry about having enough food stored away for a crisis. And I know, because for a long time I was one of them, scraping by each month and barely having a few extra canned goods to show for all my efforts. So it seems pretty easy to stockpile when you're rich. But I wasn't, and I had to work hard for everything I put aside for darker times. Until one day, it all changed almost overnight. I took a trip with my church to South America, and believe me, I don't say this lightly, that trip changed my entire life. And if you'll watch this free presentation all the way through, I promise to tell you the eye-opening story of what I discovered deep in the Andes Mountains. What I've unearthed has the power to change your life as well. So you'll never have to worry about having enough food for you and your family. You'll never have to wait hours and hours in Uncle Sam's soup line. And you can take pride in knowing your family will be incredibly well fed in any crisis. Now how? What if I told you there was a superfood out there that's been lost to history for the past 482 years? It's so nutritious that it sustained the great Incan civilization through a 4-year super drought that all but wiped out their southern neighbors. This superfood is a snap to prepare, requires no refrigeration, and has a decade-long shelf life. The Incas would simply store it in pit holes and feast on it year-round. Now, while their civilization has long since perished, their lost superfood was just recently unearthed by NASA scientists. Realizing its potential to resist extreme conditions, they've started giving rations of it to our astronauts during their month-long space missions. In fact, they found the recipe to be so effective that they classified it to keep it from hard-working Americans. But because of my trip to the Andes Mountains, I made it my mission to blow the lid off what I would call a diabolical cover-up. Every American deserves to have access to this now top-secret formulation. And finally, what if I told you that you already have every single ingredient in your kitchen to make this lost superfood right now? That's right, it doesn't have to cost you a dime more than you've already spent on groceries. Now, wouldn't you want to know about it? Then please pay careful attention, because during this short and very controversial presentation, I'll reveal exactly what this lost superfood is and how you can easily and quickly provide it for your family starting today. I'll also uncover 2 more long-lasting superfoods that we've lost to history. And guess what? Not even NASA, the CIA, the FBI, or FEMA know about them. Yet. Having them in your pantry will place you miles and miles ahead of the average American while banishing any and all fears of starvation for good. You'll never ever have to worry about whether or not you'll have enough. You'll never have to wonder if you can afford to provide for your family. And what's more, you can even have more than enough to provide for your neighbors as well. Hi, my name's Claude Davis, and I'm an Old West expert with a deep passion for understanding the skills and knowledge that allowed our forefathers to build America into the great country it is today. Now, what I've told you about so far are just some of the many things we've lost to history. I'll also show you a few more remarkable ones that shouldn't have been forgotten, things that I've unraveled in the past 2 years and managed to save for you in The Lost Ways 2nd Edition. 2 other superfoods that cost almost nothing to make that'll keep you and your family well fed no matter what happens. One was praised as the Great Depression food miracle. The people that knew about it banished hunger for good, while the rest were starving and tightening their belts. Not only will you learn the exact process of making it the right way, but you'll use it to preserve meat and create one of the most finger-licking, mouth-watering, tastiest foods you'll ever eat. And the best part, it lasts up to 2 whole years without refrigeration. And the other food was also long-lasting, invented by one of the most vicious samurai in history. It was born out of war and necessity. So don't expect a gourmet meal here, but do expect this samurai superfood to be so nutrient-rich and probiotic-packed that you and your entire family won't need anything else for months on end.
Say, did you ever wonder what really happens when you bury a shipping container? It might sound like a good idea, but please don't ever try this unless you have at least $4,000 lying around and are prepared to work intensively for a whole month. And even if you do manage to bury a shipping container, you'll soon find out that it was all for nothing. As you can see, the weight of the ground caused the curbside walls of the container to buckle in. Shipping containers are designed to hold a lot of weight, but only on the corners, not on the sides. Here's a closer look. And don't forget about the water. Additionally, what if the shipping container collapses and buries everyone inside? What if a secure shelter suddenly becomes a death trap for you and your entire family? Luckily, there is a better way to have a root cellar in your backyard and to protect your life, your family, and your stockpiles in the next crisis. Way better, way cheaper, way safer, but most importantly, way easier than burying a shipping container. And it's also waterproof, so no matter how close the water table is, it won't make one bit of difference. In this short presentation, I will reveal this ingenious method for building a unique kind of root cellar in your backyard, or even under your house, that can protect you and your family from disasters like famines, hurricanes, EMPs, looters, tornadoes, bullets, and even the radioactive fallout that follows a nuclear blast. Most importantly, it will preserve your water and food reserves year-round without refrigeration, just like our grandparents' root cellars. But it's a lot easier to build. That is because they didn't have access to one thing that we now have in abundance. We just don't use it as we should. I also want to share with you America's nuclear target map, so you can find out if you're living in a death zone. Once a nuke is headed your way, you might think that there isn't much left to do, but you would be wrong. Because I'll show you America's natural nuclear bunkers, where you can take cover before it hits. And unlike regular bunkers, which cost a fortune, these natural bunkers are free, well hidden, and EMP-proof. I think every person should know where the closest natural nuclear bunker is to their home. Sometimes shelter is so close, but you have no clue about it. You could be sitting right on top of it this very second. That's just the case in Detroit, where just 1,200 feet below the city is a salt mine outfitted with everything you need and that could easily shelter the entire population of the city. Other cities like Houston and Cleveland are also situated over similar salt mines. In fact, every state has at least 5 natural nuclear bunkers, and probably at least one is within life-saving distance from your house. Hi, my name is Claude Davis, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AskAPrepper.com and author of the Lost Ways series. Even though I'm what people like to call a prepper, I'm by no means one of those doomsday preppers you see on TV. I do like to prepare for an uncertain future, but I like to do it like our grandparents did when they had long-lasting food reserves set aside for winter and other hard times. Back in the day, every household had a root cellar, and it's in there that our forefathers stored their supplies and preserved all the food that they produced, bartered for, or bought. And that's what made them so resilient in any crisis. Nowadays, we rely almost exclusively on electricity to preserve our food, but that electricity may be gone in the blink of an eye if an EMP hits. As a senior, I realized long ago that bugging out in a crisis was no longer an option for me. I'll leave that to the young people who are still able to deal with the many hardships of living isolated in the woods. But even for the young, this should be a last resort. Bugging out to live off the land is a fairy tale most of the time. What are you going to do when 10,000 other folks bug out to your part of the woods? Goodbye, game animals, fish, or edible plants. If someone assumes that bug out to the country, I don't think that country folk are going to be that welcoming of intruders on their property. Bugging out and not belonging to that area could get you in serious trouble. Even if you have only 2 weeks' worth of food and water at home, that is nothing to sneeze at. So my advice is to find a way to stay at home and bug in. Leave only if you really have to. Our grandparents didn't bug out because they had their root cellars, And not only did they keep their food and water supplies for months there, but it's also a place to take shelter when a storm hit or in times of social unrest and chaos when the area became unsafe. So putting two and two together, I decided to find a simple way to have my own fortified root cellar, a kind of bunker in my own backyard where I could keep all my survival stuff.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole Appelian. I'm an herbalist, and I've studied plants and natural remedies for the past 20 years. I got my undergraduate degree at McGill University, my master's at the University of Oregon, and my PhD at Prescott College. But I was never afraid of dirt time. I've studied plants on the savanna and have lived and worked with one of the last remaining San Bushman tribes of the Kalahari.
In 2015, I was among the first women to be selected for the History Channel's TV show, Alone. I then went on to survive for 57 days straight in the wild, with little more than my knife and the plants that I found there. But what I'm probably known best for is making powerful remedies. For people with autoimmune disorders, for people who have been taking pills for years with little to no effect, for people who are tired of dealing with the countless side effects of drugs, for people who can't afford or don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to Big Pharma each month, for people who want to be prepared for a crisis when the pharmacies run dry and they're not able to refill their prescriptions, and for people who just want to live a healthier life. I've helped thousands of people treat themselves naturally after following my advice and taking my remedies. In most cases, that advice can be boiled down to just 3 teachings that will change your life forever and put you on the path to healing yourself.
In the first lesson, you'll discover the one most important thing you should never take for granted, but you probably do. It almost killed me. As you look at me right now as I'm talking to you, you can't see it, but I have a terrible and incurable disease. When the first symptoms appeared, I didn't give them much credence. I was just 29 when I started feeling tired all the time. I would lose my balance every now and then, and I felt some tingling in my feet. Then, one day, as I was flying home to see my parents, all of a sudden, I lost my eyesight in one eye. I remember I was in my seat panicking and constantly rubbing my eye, thinking it's just something that would go away. The doctors did an MRI and said I had a clear-cut case of multiple sclerosis, a crippling autoimmune disease. They put me on medication, a lot of medication. I was injecting myself every day, but my disease was only getting worse. Soon, I couldn't go to work anymore. I was slowly losing control of my own body. My disease kept me bedbound most of the time. On good days, I could still walk using a cane. I bought a house that was wheelchair accessible. The expectations were that I would be in a wheelchair the rest of my life, in the best case scenario. I was continuously in pain. It was agonizing. It often felt like I was being burned with a cigarette lighter. But the fear of having to depend on others for simple things like going to the toilet was even worse. This was supposed to be my new life, the new normal. Life changes when you get sick. Like it or not, sooner or later you will face something similar. Everything you thought was important suddenly takes a back seat. Your priorities shift, but they shift to where they should have been all along. It's ironic that our health seems more valuable only after we lose it. Without it, we have nothing. Imagine this. If you could heal yourself from a crippling disease, would you spend everything you have for a life-saving treatment? I know I would. Everything else can be rebuilt. Instead, we spend most of our time trying to make more money and almost no time preserving our health. It's only once we are in a hospital bed or sick at home that we appreciate it. But then it will be too late. Tomorrow, your life might change completely. You don't know when your years will get stolen from you. So don't take your health for granted. Don't wait for it to deteriorate to take care of it. In my case, the life I was living became unbearable. This led me to pour all my time and my resources into the biggest medical research of my life. But the thing I found out didn't just put me on the path to recovery, it ended up saving many other sick people as well. People with very different diseases that had nothing to do with multiple sclerosis. And it might well have something to do with you, the one watching this video. Because if you have ever taken prescription pills, or if you're taking some right now, you need to know one.
Think about your own grandparents. Back in the day, people were a lot more self-reliant. They knew how to take care of themselves and their loved ones, just like my grandfather did. Many from their generation would probably scoff at how modern people immediately run to the doctor for every small cut and bruise, which can easily be fixed at home, or how much we pay for health care we don't really need. Today, I want to show you some common sense ways to manage most health conditions from the comfort of your own home. I'm talking about simple things like relieving pain, stopping a wound from bleeding, applying a stitch, managing blood pressure and blood sugar, calming down a racing heart, keeping your memory in great shape, and clearing an infection, boosting your immunity, controlling stress levels, and many, many more. When I was a boy, my mother wouldn't take me to see a doctor for every small scratch I got playing in the park. If I fell and hurt my knees, she wouldn't sue the park like some modern folks do. People back in the day were a lot more responsible. They lived in the real world. Today, we've become increasingly disconnected from it, and we stand to pay the ultimate price for this folly when the system fails. But this forgotten wisdom is not only reserved for dark times. These methods are nothing fancy, but they will probably save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on unnecessary doctor's appointments over the next few years. It will also make you less dependent on a vulnerable medical system. We never know what the future holds, and what we find normal today, like going to the pharmacy or hospital, might be gone tomorrow. Please listen carefully to this free advice, as one day it may help you or someone you love. I recently got in touch with a frontline doctor working in a country that's been dealing with hardship and shortages for years and is yet to recover. The truth is, if you want to see what happens during hard times, all you have to do is look at Venezuela. No electricity, no running water, no law, no antibiotics, no painkillers, no anesthetics, no insulin, no nothing. But if you want to find out how you can still manage in a desperate situation like this, you must also look to Venezuela and learn from the handful of people who cope despite widespread medical shortages of every kind. Dr. Maybell is one of them. She's a general surgeon at Caracas University Hospital. People over there had to discover new ways to take care of their own health care once pharmacies ran dry and hospitals overflowed with patients. In this short presentation, I'll show you 3 things I've learned from her that will help you take care of yourself and your family during dark times and may help you slash some medical costs starting today. Each one is important, but the third one is absolutely astonishing. I would have never thought about it and guessed how effective it is. Hi, my name is Claude Davis. I'm an old-fashioned guy who some people like to call a prepper, but I'm not one of those folks you see on TV preparing for a zombie apocalypse. I do prepare for an uncertain future, but I like to do it as our grandparents did, when nearly every household canned food for winter, saved rainwater in wooden barrels, and grew natural remedies in their own backyard. The first of the 3 things I want to share with you is probably hard to believe, that when everything is still okay in our country, but the simple truth is that once society starts to break down, going to a hospital can be a very bad idea. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people were left without a home, food, electricity, or running water. But some still had all these things because they had prepared for such an event. My friend Tom was one of them. He had at least 3 months' worth of food and water and a brand new generator that could power his entire home. Because Tom thought he had everything he needed at home, and because his house was on high ground, he decided to stay and weather out the storm. During the hurricane, a small wooden splinter flew inside through a broken window and pierced his hand. It was just a tiny wound. It wasn't really deep, and he thought he could manage it at home. He bandaged the wound with what he still had in his first aid kit and went to sleep that night. A few days later, he woke up in a cold sweat. His finger was pulsating, and he could tell an infection was taking hold. What you want to do in this kind of situation, other than disinfecting the wound, is to immediately take some antibiotics. Unfortunately, Tom didn't have any stockpiled because, as you know, they require a prescription. In a minute, I'll show you a way around that, but which people in Venezuela discovered after they ran out of antibiotics. Over the next couple of days, Tom's situation went from bad to worse.